30. I'm going to bring this July 10th meeting of the planning board to order. We're going to start with a work session, looking at the proposed update to Chelmsford outdoor lighting bylaw. We were provided with a draft as well as a historical lighting bylaw by Kelly, who's taken this and run to the hills. And now in front of us, we also have today a list of the stakeholders that he provided us with since the last meeting. And then Chris also had some feedback, I think it was a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So,
Work in progress.
work in progress.
Right, so Kelly PD, 117 Park Road. A nice dark end of town, actually. Show you. I go over to Sunny Meadow Farm and use my telescope, so some night we'll collect there. Since the June 26th meeting, I have reached out to as many stakeholders as I can on that list. Last night I met with the Conservation Commission and also the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee. I have a meeting planned with Director Clancy at the DPW next week. I have a meeting planned with the president of the CBA, the Chelmsford Business Association. They're clearly going to be impacted by this. I'm hoping to connect with a couple of the, like the Historic Commission, the Historic District Commission, and I think eventually there's a plan to have me appear at a department head meeting at some point in the future.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that since then, there exists within the Commonwealth a framework for municipalities and businesses, for that matter, to acquire lighting that is certified as being energy efficient, dark sky friendly. That's through what's called the Design Lights Consortium, which is based in Medford. And utilities often look to this group for guidance on what kind of lighting is the best. And there was a very interesting webinar today that I listened to that was directly connected to how can we select lights that are both energy efficient and dark sky friendly. It was fascinating, and I won't go into the details, but the point is there's a lot of impetus going on behind the scenes to create lighting that does what we need it to do in terms of safety and security, wayfinding and so forth, and also is dark sky friendly. So I'm not alone here. I'm not a voice in the wilderness. I don't know quite what to do tonight. I was talking to Evan just beforehand. I think an important first step will be, as we discussed last time, to determine to what extent, if at all, the planning board can either support or sponsor or create a general bylaw as distinct from a zoning bylaw. Because again, what I'm proposing to do is to remove the zoning bylaw that exists and replace it with a general bylaw. The principal purpose for doing that is so that existing lighting that is bad, that wouldn't conform, can be labeled non-conforming, won't be grandfathered. There would be a period of time during which we would try to bring that lighting into conformance. The example I gave was, the bylaw that we have, which was great for its time, passed in the year 2000, was before LEDs hit the scene. So every LED that you see on the street or home or business in our town was installed after that bylaw was instituted, and many of those, maybe hundreds of those, I haven't counted, I haven't attempted to count, are not conforming according to the existing bylaw that we have, which has a basic requirement of it has to be pointed down. And lots don't do that. I'm not going to name names, but they're out there. And so, there were some who would say, well, this notion of of eliminating the grandfathering and sunset clause and trying to claw back some of this underperforming overlit is not fair. Well, I would submit that lighting should have been, if that lighting had been installed correctly in the first place, it would probably be conforming now. And so that combined with the fact that LEDs although they're fantastic, they do have a lifetime. Our town streetlights, for example, were installed a decade ago. And they will start to be, not only are they going to start to be at the end of their useful lifetime, which might be 20 years, we don't know. They haven't been up that long. That's on paper how long they might last. But more importantly, the town has more than recouped its return on investment for those lights. And so there are better technologies now than what we installed 10 years ago. So one of the things I hope to discuss with Director Clancy when we meet next week is there a next-gen street lighting plan for Chelmsford? And what would that, and not only street lights, but also the whole municipal lighting package, the parking lot lighting and the library parking lot lighting. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you've probably noticed, which I certainly have noticed, is that many businesses, municipal facilities, have their parking lot lights on all night. Why? What's the point of that? What's the security point of that? And so it's a discussion. I don't think I have the answer for that, but it is a discussion. Next time you drive by the Walgreens late at night, you'll notice that its parking lot is completely dark. There are lights inside. There are lights over the doorways. That's all perfect for security and safety, but there's really no need. And so what I would say to the town, to businesses, to residences, who are saying this is overreach, I'm trying to save you money. If you put in dark sky friendly lighting, if you put in security lighting that only comes on with a motion sensor instead of being on all night, you will save money. Mm-hmm. I can save you money. And so I'm not sure where to go next with the discussion. I'm here to answer your questions as much as anything. I didn't bring my little funky lights tonight, so we can just chat. I want to thank Chris for his great set of questions that he put forward to me. I hope I answered them adequately for you, and that's the kind of discussion that I'm really embracing. I'm reaching out to all these stakeholders, not so much to tell them how it's going to be, but like, what do I need? What have I missed? Where is there common ground?
I mean, a couple things. I have a couple quick thoughts. One is, I'm certainly not a lighting expert, and a lot of this is very technical. But I agree with Chris in terms of, I mean, you add another thought to the idea that we've recouped the investment and that there's better technology available. But I think if we're going to have a transitional period, like timeline to achieve conformity, we might want to have two different timelines, one for people who are changing from standard lights, if there's any of those left, and that might be a short timeline, and maybe a slightly longer one, even yet longer than 5 years for the LED people, so that if people have spent a outlay in the last several years, they too would have a chance to recoup their investment.
I agree, and I am open. I kind of think, just in my bones, I think that 10 years is too long across the board. One of the things that I'm trying to do with this proposed bylaw is to find trigger points where we would naturally capture a conversion to conforming lights. If you change Summer Street Mall is a really good example of a place that has 50-year-old lighting technology, high-pressure sodium, which, by the way, from a light pollution standpoint, is pretty good. It's that orangey-colored light, but it's relatively inefficient compared to LEDs. LEDs can do all kinds of tricks. They can be turned on and off. They can be dimmed. They can do all kinds of things that high-pressure sodium cannot. And so when the owner of that property eventually changes those over, I would expect those to be conforming out of the gate.
Right.
Right? So I can see, for example, I keep alluding to all of the lights that have been installed, the LEDs that are not conforming. One of the reasons they don't conform is that they're simply not pointed down.
Right.
And they're all on gimbals, so a first order, would be to all right, let's trim those down, and then let's talk in 5 years or 10 years or whatever that might be. One of the components of this is a change to a maximum color temperature, like I demonstrated last time. Even if I point a light down, if it's a really high temperature light, it's eventually going to be replaced. And maybe there's a natural wording that we can come up with, an end of lifetime kind of thing, where there's an agreement that that would happen. One of the other things I'm exploring is, you might remember that I have proposed the creation of a sort of an outdoor lighting officer or inspector, someone with expertise that might not exist on the, with the electrical inspector or any of the inspectors in town on a contract basis. It has occurred to me, and I have a close contact in Carlisle, who is the former president of the Illuminating Engineering Society, which sets lighting standards for the whole country. He happens to be next door in Carlisle. Would it be reasonable for those lighting engineers who are sympathetic to dark sky issues to do pro bono work for a business, for a for the Chelmsford Housing Authority or whoever it might be, to basically design for them or advise them on what lights they can install that would bring them into conformity? I've got all kinds of ideas kicking around in my head, and I think it's all part of the discussion that I want to have with you and with these other stakeholders.
Right. I mean, maybe they could get a reduction of their taxes if they donated time.
I'm just sort of stream of consciousness here. I mentioned this notion of having our next generation streetlights. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is for the funding that came to us for COVID, and I think there's something like $1 million left of it. When we replace the street lights the next time, let me back up. When we replaced the street lights the last time, that was as part of the Johnson Controls Energy Services contract. They didn't care. They replaced street light for street light. If there was one on the pole, they put one back on the pole, roughly the same number of lumens. I managed to capture the ones that were going to be street lights and got them to do 4,000 Kelvin instead of 5,700. But there were a bunch that I missed, especially the ones for area lighting in the town hall parking lot and schools and so forth. What I would love to see the next time we go to that step, and this is one of the things I'm going to talk to DPW about, is let's do a lighting audit. Let's have a professional come in here and tell us, because if you ask anybody who's been around long enough, they'll say, why is there a street light on Park Road? Why are there only 4 street lights and they're down at the Proctor Road end of it where I live instead of at the beginning where the Acton Road is? It's because they've happened accidentally. Somebody has said at one point in time, I'd sure like to have a street light outside my house, and bang, it happened. There was no plan. And so a lighting audit would get somebody in here to say, where do you need them, where do you don't? And you'll appreciate the common sense of this, the speed limits in our town are slow enough in most cases for headlights on a car, especially modern headlights, which are much brighter than on my 1999 Jetta, to illuminate the road so that you don't outrun your headlights. That is, you can stop safely within about 40 miles an hour. And there aren't that many places in town that have speed limits above that. And so consequently, a focus for an audit might be, where are the conflict zones? Where are there crosswalks? Where are the pedestrians and cars mingling? Where do you want to have illumination so that somebody doesn't go off the road around a curve or something like that? That's what an audit might do. I would love to see that happen, irrespective of what happens with this bylaw.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. The last time around in 2000, I think I remember that. I think I was.
It was me and Bob Morse.
Yeah, you and Bob
the planning
Morse.
board.
Yeah. They came up with something. It was pretty good for its time. As you've pointed out, though, the problem was not so much that those rules are outdated, although to some degree they are, but rather we just never had an enforcement mechanism. I'm not sure we ever really had a very good mechanism of letting people know. No, just nobody was looking at this stuff. You've mentioned the idea of some person or some group having the authority or responsibility to look after enforcement of whatever we might pass. But I think that deserves a whole lot more conversation, because it didn't work the last time. And I've got to make sure it works this time.
Yeah, if I can address that.
Yeah.
What we have is a complaint-driven bylaw.
Right. And that's,
And even, let's face it, there are bigger fish in the building inspector's office in terms of enforcement.
Yep.
And I have once or twice only called attention to certain lights that I thought were egregiously bad, and eventually those were addressed and fixed. To its credit, for example, the CVS in town, the new one that was built, it had what are called wall packs, which are slapped on the side of a building to try to illuminate an entire parking lot. Were not shielded, and they were fixed. When Walmart came in, they abided by the bylaw.
Yeah.
And the lighting around the Walmart, they've added 1 or 2 cents, but if you look at the lighting around the perimeter of Walmart, those are fully shielded fixtures. That was the premise of it. But a complaint-driven bylaw needs somebody to complain. And so, as you point out, if people don't know, if a homeowner changes out, a homeowner will go to a Home Depot and buy a $30 LED security light, slap it up on the side of the house, and they think it's great because it's doing the job and it's not conforming. I would not propose, by the way, just to be clear here, I would not propose that this professional or professionals that we engage become the lighting police and go around town looking for things that are not conforming. It would continue to be, in large part, a complaint-driven system, with the exception that we would have certain gates, certain triggers that would require conformance. If a property is sold, for example, changes ownership, just like you need to have your fire detectors checked, your sewer needs to be in order, this would become one of the things that would need to have a check off that somebody affirms or confirms that your lighting is conforming before it can change hands. Or if you do construction, or if you replace the number of lights in your parking lot. I'm not sure I mentioned this last time, but that's exactly what happened under the existing bylaw with the Chelmsford Mall. When Kohl's came into the Chelmsford Mall, the owners of the property redid the parking lot lighting around Kohl's. And that triggered a provision in the existing bylaw that if you've done more than 25%, and Chris, this is one of those just count the polls kind of thing, if you replace more than 25%, you got to replace them all, and they did. And they put what are called house side shields. If you look next time you go by on the parking lot lights that are along Chelmsford Street, and there are houses across the street, there are little shields at the bottoms of those that keep the light from shining on those properties directly. That was doing the right thing. But that was kind of a rare exception. Was that the only thing? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know you brought that point up, Kelly, but one of the things that we may need to do is, I think someone mentioned it earlier, is separate out the commercial versus residential. It's easy enough to count the poles in a commercial space, but it's not so easy to determine that percentage in residential areas. So we may need to separate out commercial triggers and thresholds versus residential if this needs to go forward.
Right. I don't disagree at all. I mean, if you think about a typical residential house, there's really only 2 kinds of, well, maybe 3 if they've got landscape lighting or lighting strings or something like that. But there's only 2 kinds of lighting. It's what's on their porches and around their entryways, and it's what they might have as a security light shining out to protect their property. Now, research has shown that, believe it or not, all-night security lighting does nothing to improve your safety. All it does is show the bad guys, to be generic here, what you've got in your yard. Much better from the standpoint of security is a security light that's triggered by a motion sensor. And so there's a case where if you look at the watts expended and the dollars expended on electricity for that fixture, converting it to a motion sensor pays for itself very rapidly, sometimes only months. And so you're right that I want to be very careful to preserve a person's right to protect their property with security lighting. But there are ways to do it that are better than maybe the way they're doing it now. And if that requires a two-tiered system, one for commercial and one for residential, that's fine. Let's do that.
I think whatever bylaw adjustment we make, I think we should do a timeline that this gets reviewed by the groups that are the stakeholders here, at least every 5 years.
For
Re-up, because technology changes.
Yeah.
right.
So in the next 5 years, right now, we're looking at LEDs right now. What's going to happen in 5 years from now? The change.
Right.
So then we're going to be playing catch-up again. So
Right.
I think we should mandate, if the board agrees and we go to the town, that we do put something in there that the planning board will review it with the stakeholders in the town every 5 years.
Yep.
And see if it needs to continue or any adjustments need to be made.
That sounds wonderful. Are there bylaws on the books that have that kind of recurrent revision?
I don't think
think
there
so.
are, but we can put
Well,
that
you
in
can
there.
put them in, I mean, whether it's regulatory or simply suggestive
I
is
suggest.
an open question, but putting it in there can't hurt you.
Right.
5 years might be quick, maybe 8 or something.
Technology's changing.
Pick a number.
So we're going to make a bylaw right now on technology that's already outdated. And then by the time it gets through town meeting, there's going to be different types already happening.
Yeah, interestingly, if I could just give you a page from this webinar, I mentioned last time this notion of color temperature. And the lower the color temperature, it's a proxy for how much blue light is in a fixture. The higher that number, the more blue light, the bluer the light looks. The lower that number, the less blue light it has. And in the information that I sent to Chris, there were a series of spectra that you can sort of see how the blue light component diminishes as you lower the color temperature. Even so, what I learned today was that even if you go rock bottom, next time you are driving through the town of Pepperell at night, that they took a great leap. They have installed street lights that have a color temperature of 2200 Kelvin. It's essentially the same as what a high pressure sodium bulb is. It has those LEDs have a peachy color. And yet, because the LEDs are still broad spectrum, they actually emit and create more light pollution, more light scatter, the blue is in the LEDs, than their high-pressure sodium equivalents. That's why I was saying those HPS bulbs are great from the standpoint of light pollution, horrible from the standpoint of energy efficiency. So, to your point about revisiting, 5 years ago, there was no such thing as a 2200 Kelvin street light. Now they're common. The bar is moving down and down and down. And so I think that's a wise thing to suggest that we revisit it, or maybe it's just something that you do internally here, You have me come back in 5 years and say, what's the state of the science with outdoor lighting, and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Happy to do that. Let me get my calendar up.
Anyone else have anything else for Kelly or thoughts for us? So going forward, you're going to have a meeting with the department heads. You're going to talk to it seems like we're throwing everything on you, but we're going to have like an organized meeting of the stakeholders, some place to kind of go over this draft, or
what I have done so far is reaching out to the stakeholders one at a time. I think a key one will be the Chelmsford Business Association, which is next week. They've all gone away on vacation. Many of the people who are officers were on the parade committee, and they're wiped. So they all took off on vacation, and they're gone now. But I'm hoping to have something substantive for the next time we meet on that front. Whether we gather all these stakeholders in a room, and hash it out, that might be less productive than, say, encouraging those stakeholders, as you might with any development that you have, to weigh in by letter or by appearing here to say, this is what we think about this, and then maybe have a subset of planning board members to sit around a table and let's work out the wording that we want to have going forward.
Okay. And what kind of a timeline do you think would be appropriate to have that
Well,
place.
there was a time, if I'm recalling this correctly, that one didn't dare put a zoning or general bylaw on the
Spring.
docket for a spring town meeting.
Yeah.
But I think that's not as rigorous as it used to be. So I think especially given that some, like the CBA's board is not meeting at all in July and August. So I think the notion of doing a careful and good and collaborative job on this in time for fall town meeting is probably not possible. And I would love to have this continue over the course of the winter and have a really solid one that not only that represents the best thinking of all of these stakeholders, but that they could all support.
So maybe we could shoot for some kind of a meeting like that in October and a draft for January?
It's fine with me. I mean, one of the things I'm going to continue doing in the background, in addition to talking to them, is talk to the people that I deal with in terms of lighting industry people, and say, is this well-grounded? Now, I will say this draft has been in conjunction, co-written by a lighting professional, so it's not something I just made up. But it's a template. It's imperfect. I've tried to tailor it to Chelmsford as best I can, and it's probably an imperfect job. But I would like to see it. You know, there are some hard asks in here. I recognize that. This notion of having no grandfathering in a sunset clause, that's rare. The notion of having an external professional do the ascertainment for whoever needs it, that's rare. And so I would like to still see those components in it, but let's have the discussion and see if it's viable.
Perfect.
Evan, have we heard any answers on whether the planning board can sponsor a general bylaw?
I have not asked council yet. I will do that probably tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, because from my point of view, when I sit behind that microphone as moderator for CTM, I see a lot of citizen petitions that sort of have two strikes against them by the time, when they're brought forward. I will bring this forward as a citizen petition, but I think it would be much more robust and fairly judged, I guess, if it were brought forward by the planning board, if you felt
And I
that.
think if we sponsored it from the vantage point that it's replacing a zoning,
I don't think there's any limitation at all.
yeah,
None.
I would be.
Go ask council.
I would be surprised if there were.
But
Anyway,
I don't think there is.
so, thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you again for your attention, and
Thank you.
keep those questions coming. Thank you.
Okay, so it being 7 o'clock, we're going to start with the regular meeting, which I just wanted to clarify that it is being recorded by telemedia. And if anyone is going to speak when the time comes, you should state your name and your address. I just want to, before we get too far in, I just wanted to mention that we are discussing, not quite yet, 150 North Road, but the developer has requested a continuation for the plan, and the only aspect of that we're going to be discussing this evening is the A&R, the request for A&R. So if people wanted to speak about the general plan, that there won't be an opportunity to do that this evening, because we won't be opening the public hearing on that regard. So I don't know if that leads anyone to not want to stay, but I just wanted to put that out there. We also have several members on Zoom, Anita, I believe, as well as Joel, as well as Chris. Is that correct?
Yes.
So any voting that we do, we will be doing by roll call. And if anyone would please remind me if I forget. Okay, first up we have public input. And public input will be limited to statements relating to issues that are within the jurisdiction of the planning board but are not currently the subject of a pending public hearing. So I don't know if there's anyone who wants to speak about such matters. Is there anyone on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Okay. Next up, we have new administrative review, of which there's none, and the administrative review for 150 North Road.
Hi. For the record, my name's Chris Fazenden. I'm the applicant with the Gardner School. Address is 302 Innovation Drive, Franklin, Tennessee 37067. When we were here a couple weeks ago, we decided to continue the review of the A&R plan for 150 North Road. Here tonight to continue that discussion with the objective of obtaining your endorsement on the plan. I put together a brief presentation here, just kind of highlighting a few things. We'll go through existing lot layout and the history. I'll touch on our proposed layout and configuration, and then I'll give you a couple bullet points on why we feel we meet the criteria and are requesting your endorsement. So, first slide here, it shows the lot configuration prior to the 2022 A&R that we discussed last time. The reason I'm showing this to you is this is what the town GIS map currently shows. It hasn't been updated just yet with the 2022 approval. So I know there was some confusion last time. I just wanted to identify kind of the area that was originally subdivided. That's lots 2 and 3 there. Moving down, you then look at the 2022 A&R plan that's been approved and recorded since. This is where it took those lots previously 2 and 3 and subdivided them into 8 lots, all of about the same size, give or take. What I've done here is in red, I've highlighted the 3 lots of this 8-lot subdivision that will be impacted by our proposed subdivision. That's lots 1, 2, and 3. So if we go one more. This is our proposed plan. What we're proposing is to create a single lot comprised of the previous lots 1 and 2 and a portion of lot 3. That's shown there in the red outlined area. Lot area is 3.12 acres, roughly 136,000 square feet. Provides 366 feet of frontage on North Road. And then I've just provided up there some of the dimensional criteria for the zoning. 40-foot front setback, 25-foot side setback, 30 rear setback. So with that, based on kind of the history and what we're proposing, if you want to go to the last one, we evaluated the A&R handbook, we looked at our plan, and we developed a list of bullet points that we feel show we meet the criteria and why we're requesting our endorsement. All the proposed lots shown on our plan, front of public way with the municipal clerk certifying is maintained and used as a public way. We meet the minimum frontage requirement identified in the local bylaw. Can access the appropriate public way from each lot's designated frontage. Are providing adequate access to from a recently paved public way of sufficient width and condition to accommodate motor vehicle travel. And we're providing practical access where the buildable portion of each lot is connected by a strip of land no narrower than the required frontage. Those are all criteria in the handbook that designate what allows an A&R plan to be endorsed. With that, I know I ran through it pretty quickly. Happy to answer any questions. I appreciate your time.
I know that we had a question specifically about the procedural ability of having the 8-lot subdivision, single-family subdivision now changed into 5 lots and merge the remaining 3 for the daycare. I mean, it sounds like this 3-lot bit meets the A&R criteria, so it doesn't seem, now as I think about it, that there's a question, but is that a correct understanding?
That's certainly my understanding. With us tonight is Attorney Jonathan Eichman from Copeland and Page. He was originally asked to join in on the site plan, but he is here to answer any questions on the A&R for the board. I think it's fairly straightforward. The applicant's assessment, and I think many board members are aware of the assessment. There was some question, I believe at the last meeting, related to whether any of the legal proceedings and discussions that took place prior to an at-town meeting that resulted in the town voting to take Charles Way, whether any of those legal documents prohibited a modification to the 8-lot, single-family A&R subdivision. There was nothing, there's no legal provisions, restrictions, covenants as part of that, that town meeting process. But as I said, town council is here to assist in any way.
I guess I would just like for him to, if it wouldn't be too much, to, I mean, the applicant has done it to some extent, but if town council could just reiterate for us it's my understanding that the requirements for the A&R are met, therefore, the request for the A&R needs to be granted. Is that correct?
Jonathan, you want to welcome yourself to Chelmsford and to the planning board?
I'll let the planning board welcome me, but Madam Chair, my name is Jonathan Eichman. I'm attending at your request to assist. To your question, I believe your understanding is correct. If what the applicant says is correct, and I've reviewed the plan, I believe it is, there is no proposed division of land. What the applicant is proposing is to remove lot lines. So this plan would qualify for an endorsement, and once it qualifies, then the planning board is required to endorse it.
What if we don't?
We won't have a legal standing.
How do we know unless we go to court?
That's how you'd find out.
It sounds to me like, from what Jonathan said, it would be a pretty quick court case.
Worth a try.
I mean,
I mean, the problem here isn't the A&R, the problem is the
No.
other pieces of this.
the
And we're not
A&R
Well, that
addressing them
enables the
tonight.
other pieces.
No, they're gonna happen anyway.
I don't know, I'm reading some other stuff here.
So why are they here? If it requires us to approve it and we can't give us our opinion, why do they come to this process?
Because that's what our zoning
But why?
law requires.
We should change it, because this is a waste of a lot of
It's-
people's
I
time.
think some of it is based upon state law. Jonathan, do you want to provide some context?
Yes, I can. Again, Madam Chair, through you, yes, it is completely based on state law. And in fact, the reason they're asking for your endorsement is because they need your endorsement to record the plan with the Registry of Deeds. And again, the purpose, as I understand it, based on what's shown on the plan, is that they are simply asserting or confirming their intent to use the 3 lots shown on the plan, on the original subdivision plan, as 1 lot. And they're going to record a plan that says as much. And the state law requires that if you want to record a plan showing land, there are only 2 ways to get it recorded. One, you either have a certificate of a land surveyor saying that there are no new lot lines or streets shown on the plan, or that in this case, if there is any new lot lines, that it's not a plan that requires approval under the subdivision control law. And those plans are only those plans where the plan shows a division of land into 2 or more lots. This plan does not show a division, it shows a removal of lot lines. So according to state law, it's going to require endorsement.
Okay. Does anyone have any further questions for the applicant?
I just
or
have a question for Evan.
Jonathan?
I have a question for Evan.
We'll try to help you.
Maybe. I remember this plan coming forward with us to put all those single-family homes on that street. And I just find the plan of the drawing is dated 11/15/21, and then there's a written date a year later. It files a year later than that, and then there's no date next to the signatures of the planning board members that signed it. So do you know when that plan was in front of us? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out some dates here, because it happened after, I know it was after 2020, but I don't recall it being 2022.
I don't recall if the A&R was signed prior to the town meeting or after town meeting.
I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with approving and not approving, it just seems inconsistent on that plan. Because usually when we do sign the plots, these plans, we have a date next to our signatures, and there's no date on this one.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
If you have the actual submitted plan, it looks like it was revised somewhere in November of 21, and then it looked like at the top right, it was recorded in, say, February of 22.
He's referring to the signature, the planning board signature block. Doesn't have a date.
I was just trying to find out when this came forward to us, because this is, I've been waiting for this development to happen, the actual
Right.
residents that
Sure.
we went through a big discussion on, and it just hasn't happened.
Just giving you the dates that I saw.
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's on the plan. It's on this official plan that you submitted.
Yeah, I think the only update I have on the single-family Charles Way is I believe all of the utilities have been stubbed.
Okay.
And that obviously
they've been
logistically
working
is
up on the hill,
taking
they've been
place
working
prior to the town going in and upgrading the road.
Okay. Thanks.
So at this point, I think we're looking for a motion from the board. Just as a reminder, the applicant did grant an extension to the board on the statutory time to act. And that is, I think, through this evening or expires tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow. And we're well beyond the 21 days.
So at this point, I would make a motion to endorse the A&R as presented.
With no determination as to zoning, perhaps?
Correct.
I will
Good
second.
addition.
Motion by Chris, second by Mike Raisbeck. We'll take a vote with a roll call. Mike Raisbeck?
Aye.
Aye.
Paul?
No.
Reluctantly, I say aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
And
That's it. Joel
I'm
doesn't
an
vote on A&Rs. And you?
I'm an aye.
6-1.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Is this open to comment by chance?
No.
No, it's not public.
Okay. Well, that was fun. On to Nancy Chen, Garrison Place. Oh, first planning board, we're not going to do any,
Should take a motion to continue that to your August 28th meeting?
for the site plan,
Yeah. the
Yeah.
Rules and regulations.
So move.
28th.
Correct.
Take a motion.
I will move it.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
John, Mike, Paul,
Aye.
Mike Walsh,
Aye.
Anita,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, so next up we have board's special permit rules and site plan rules and regulations and policies, which we will, again, continue as we have a quite full agenda. Next up, we have Nancy Chen of Garrison Place for the property at 313 Littleton Road for the purpose of creating 3 new residential apartments. The applicant requests approval under Article 21, Community Enhancement and Investment Overlay District, in subsections 195-111C, and any other permit relief as may be required under the Chelmsford zoning bylaw to allow the proposed use. The site is in the CB, roadside commercial zoning district, and is shown as parcel ID map 99, block 403, lot 19, and consists of approximately 2.17 acres. We have before us the applicant, Nancy.
Yeah, my name is Nancy Chan from 313 Littleton Road, Chelmsford. And last time you want the whole floor plan, second floor plan for the whole property. So I just, do you have one?
We have it up on the screen.
Oh, okay. And then also you want me to give you the parking space calculation, which I just gave to you.
That just went around the table, hard copy. Nancy brought that to the meeting tonight?
Oh, I don't think I saw that.
Did it go around?
Which one?
I have 7 copies.
Sorry.
So there's three members on Zoom, Nancy,
Okay.
so they're not going to be able to see this. You'll have to walk the board through
Stopped
it.
at me, sorry.
That's okay. If you could summarize.
Yeah, I need a copy because I don't have one.
Thanks.
You want me to explain this parking calculation? Parking space calculation?
Yes, yeah, because there's
Please,
three
yeah.
members
Okay.
on Zoom.
The Mexican Chili is basically is a takeout restaurant. So they usually take 3 parking space. And the Thai Jasmine is a Thai restaurant. And they used to have 3 units. Now they just cut down to 2. So they only need 10 parking space. And the liquor store, Castor and the Bottle, they have 5 parking spaces. People in and out in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And then the Indian restaurant, a Masala Cafe, is a 16 parking space. And then upstairs, the dancing center has 20 because some of the teenagers, they drive. And a lot of parents, they just go the loop. They drop the kids and then they leave. And then the Signature Architect, they only have 2 employees, so 2 cars. And the Replay Avenue only have 1. Actually, they usually not show up because the owner is legally blind, so he has to have someone drive him here. He usually is not there.
Okay.
So total added up is a 57 parking space, and I have 157 parking space, so I have 100 extras. You can drive by anytime you will see. I have a lot of parking space left.
Okay. And so the parking required, obviously it's not 100 spaces, but just to be, for the sake of completeness, the parking required for the apartments will be,
Well, I would say 2 per apartment, 2 husband and wife.
No, what are the
based on the
rules say?
bedrooms.
Yeah, how many seats are in the Thai Jasmine? How many
Well,
seats
those
in the
parking, the
Masala
parking
Cafe?
counts that Nancy has presented are likely either based upon what she believes is the actual usage, maybe the lease, but certainly not zoning.
Yeah, so like Masala Cafe, how many seats are in that?
I think they are like a 60, but if you divide it by 4, so it's 15 tables.
Nancy, I think the board was looking for this information based upon compliance with parking ratios.
What I try to say is, I think this 313 Littleton Place has the highest number parking space than any property in Chelmsford. 157, and it has 100 space empty.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right that it's not an inadequate number of parking spaces, but yeah, we were asking for, so the restaurant ones are based on number of seats in the restaurant and the.
Well, restaurant business change a lot.
But the bylaws do not.
Okay, yeah, so for Thai restaurant, they used
Yeah.
on 3 units, now they cut down to 2.
Yeah, but it's not the units, it's the seats in the
Yeah,
restaurant.
that means they cut down the seat as well. The 3rd unit, they have a lot of seat before.
There's a,
We have the information, the licensing information and the maximum capacity. We have that information. That's what we use to determine required parking based upon the licensed capacity.
okay,
So I can work with Nancy to provide that
that's fine.
information.
That's fine. I mean, I think it's fine.
Yeah, my
But-
guess is the COID requires one space per studio unit, 1.5 spaces per 1-bedroom, 2 spaces per unit with 2 or 3 bedrooms, plus 1 visitor space for every 3 units.
It should be fine.
So it's less than 10
Yeah.
out of available 100, so it's.
She likely has adequate parking.
I think she has adequate parking, right, okay. And then you had given us the plans that we requested,
For the whole upstairs.
and also for the apartments.
Right, so you can see it's the back of the building, that's where the apartment located, in the back. 4 units.
So I think Mike asked for this.
Right,
So she penciled in the other tenant spaces, dancing center,
yep,
signature architects, and then it looks like there's a couple vacant tenant spaces on the second floor.
yep.
And then the revised floor plan is here.
Lots of sinks.
I know. It's, this building originally, they planned it as a commercial condo. So each unit, they have 2 bathrooms. And a separate meters, separate ACs, separate furnace, everything separate. So when I convert to apartment, it's so easy. They're already separate. And on July 1st, I talked to the fire department. What's her name? You have the letter from her? Right after she came back from 10-day or 2 weeks vacation. So I asked her, what are you talking about, special person to evaluate this and that? And then she said, oh, you can have your architect, you can have your electrician. No. Every year I have fire alarm specialist, not electrician, not architect, to do the annual inspection. And matter of fact, last year, when they did the inspection, and then they told me like 15 of the smoke detector was on the recall after 35 years. And I changed it all. I said, architect wouldn't know that, and the electrician wouldn't know that. Only
Well,
the
they actually asked for a fire protection engineer.
yeah, that's why I say every year I have a fire protection engineer to inspect my unit every year, and also sprinkler specialist. So I talked to her. I said, "What you?" And then at the end, she said, "Oh, you are okay." But later, in other words, the reason I talked to her is I would say, "What are you talking about? What kind of specialist?"
Okay, well, we're gonna need another letter saying.
Yeah, I
you're
will
okay.
tell her. I'll tell her.
And then the water district wanted you to meet with them?
No, I already did before I applied. So that's why he did the calculation. I already talked to him.
Well, that's the sewer, right?
That's the
water.
I thought it's the water. I mean sewer and the water. They are use the same calculation.
So the Chelmsford Water District had concerns about the conversion. A representative for the project should contact the Chelmsford Water District. Once the contractor has met with us, reviewed, and accepted our requirements, we will forward a signed approval letter. So we would need that as well.
Okay. I also talked to the sewer department.
Okay, but we need the clean letters.
Okay, I will do that.
I mean, is everyone in accord?
Yeah.
Well, the fire prevention office just requests that these stipulations and requirements are included
Right,
in any
and the water
policy.
too.
Yeah.
If we approve the project.
Right, and it looked to me like the DPW was okay with the sewer based on their calculations, but they wanted some official notification from Nancy before they would also give a clean letter. Is that,
I don't recall that. I have it, I'm bringing it up right now.
yeah.
This is the water district.
A certificate of occupancy will not be issued until DPW receives a letter from the owner stating they're using 330 GPGs of the allowable 500 for this property. So there's just, it seems like there's some crossed Ts and dotted Is that need yet to be
So I have to write a letter to DPW, and then I have to get a letter from the water department.
In the fire department,
Okay.
yeah. And then, I mean, so past that, then, I guess I'll take a motion
To continue?
to, well, do we want to discuss it? Or you want to wait till all this is done to discuss it?
I just want to know, where else in town do we have mixed use on the second floor, residential and office space?
Well, we just approved it on.
That was actually going to be one of my questions.
It doesn't.
Well, we just approved it for one of the Parley buildings. Remember, it was medical on the first floor, and then
First floor.
Three meeting
And then the
rooms.
second
Not on
floor.
We're
the same
actually
floor.
looking for
Not on the same
first
floor,
floor.
right across the doorway,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
going to be a public office, and you have residential on the other floor, other side of the hallway?
This is a
Doesn't
shared,
make sense.
this is a shared hallway with businesses and residences.
But they don't share
And one of the
entrance.
businesses is a recording studio.
They share a public hallway.
No, well, yes, no.
There's a bathroom that's shared too.
Yes,
It's still on
no.
the plans that we brought up last meeting.
If you can see, the dance center and the architect, they just use the hallway from elevator to the stairways, and then the residential area, they use the other side door. So they really don't, I don't want them share the hallway. And what I try to say is, eventually, I probably will convert all to apartment, but at this point, I'm not sure yet. What I try to say is, if I can, separate them, the hallway wise, the entrance wise, entrance, I try to play low key on both sides, because like a dance center, they really like the space. You know why? Because the parking space. Sometimes they have the photo day, all the student has to come in at the same time, same day. So they would like to have 157 parking space.
So the overlay allows it. The fact that
No
there
one's
isn't,
done
there aren't
Yeah.
mixed hallways, I agree, there probably isn't another example in town.
It doesn't make sense. Doesn't show any kitchens, doesn't show the layouts of the
Oh,
rooms, and I
I
know
just-
we don't get into that. We asked about why there's a common bathroom for the hallway that comes off of a bedroom for the public, and that has not been addressed. This doesn't make sense, and the fire department says, if the planning board approves this, well, if there's a fire in this place, there's a ton of people living in here, are they gonna say, well, the planning board approved it? I don't like the letter of that, the fire department's letter.
I don't either.
Putting it on the planning board. So just think about that when you take your vote.
I don't like either.
This doesn't
I-
make sense.
I talked to her on July 1st, and then she said, you are okay. I said, because I want to know what kind of specialist she wants to inspect this space. And then she said, architect. I said, no. She said, electrician. I said, no, I have better
But
one,
that's-
fire alarm
Well,
specialist.
she-
Safety officer said a fire protection engineer.
And then a structural engineer to make sure it is fire rated, your building.
Yeah.
That's what they're asking.
Yeah,
So you do need
yeah,
an engineer.
So why don't you continue, give Nancy till
yeah.
August 28th to circle back with those departments. Your
I'm
goal
not
is to
in a
get clean
hurry.
letters,
Yeah,
and then at least the board is voting on the provisions within the COID, zoning-related provisions rather than life safety, fire
Yeah.
building provisions.
Yeah, I agree.
We don't even know how many bedrooms are going in here.
I already wrote it down. It's only.
You wrote it down. You're not
I
showing
mean,
it.
it shows on the
It's
plan.
it's 4 big rooms.
No. The plan says bedroom. In other words, basically, I
The whole
don't
space
like,
is a bedroom?
I just thought they were studios. Are they not studios?
the smallest one, yes, unit 19. In other words, the other office, they are bedrooms. I don't like to take something down and generate a lot of garbage and then build it up. No.
You're trying to build to suit, is what you're saying. But
No, I
don't think
just
that-
rent as is and just make sure they have kitchen, shower, bathroom. Very
So you're
easy.
taking an office space and making it a residential space
And add,
without making any improvements.
I do, I have to. I have to add kitchen sink, kitchen, and a shower. So just like unit 13, which already.
Yeah, well, the
someone-
one we approved for the building manager
Yeah, yes.
only,
Yes, it is.
and now you're coming, so here it comes. We
Right.
mentioned it before, you're asking for 3 more here now, and you're gonna ask, how many more you're gonna ask for in 2 years from now?
Who knows? I mean, I can't predict
Complicated.
future. I think architect probably gonna retire in 5 years. I will not get rid of them. They love that space. So, I love my tenants. It's their livelihood. I can't get rid of them, and that's why I try to, make sure they have their own entrance, own hallway. They are happy. They are happy. Everything's separate. So far, so good.
That's good that you own the building, they're happy, but we make this change, you can sell the building, everything changes. So it really has to be, I think that they're correct saying that an architect should be involved. And definitely a structural engineer. There's questions about the fire safety.
Yeah. I will talk to fire prevention and make sure she address the problem you concerned.
I would suggest that you,
Clear that up.
Yeah, I just
Fire-
talked to
fire
her. I
protection
didn't ask
engineer.
her to have a ladder, because she said, you're okay, you're okay. I'm not lying. Whatever I said is on the record, okay? July 1st, first thing in the morning, I talked to her.
Let's get it in writing.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll have her put it in writing. Yeah.
Okay, so I will take a motion.
I will move to.
Before we do that, I would
Yeah.
also like to request that couple things be addressed. I think Mike mentioned one of them, that I also mentioned in past meetings, that bathroom cannot be accessible from the hallway.
No, it's not.
Um,
It's not.
It is, there's a doorway there.
Yeah, why is it we
And-
have to change that?
That's where the architect comes in.
Well, then,
Yeah.
so present
But that
plans
needs to be on the
that
plans.
show that.
And I also would like to see something addressed where maybe separate entrances for those businesses, but I don't like a shared hallway, a common hallway for business and residents.
Right now, the main lobby is for business entrance only. Okay?
But the
Oh.
hallway that I'm seeing on that second floor is the same hallway to access
The dance.
Replay Avenue,
Well,
The
Replay,
dance-
Signature Architects, and all
Yeah.
of those units.
Replay Avenue never showed up. His family live in Westford, and he is legally blind. I don't know why he rent a space from me for 20 years. He just,
Well,
as a storage
to-
almost.
It's the
According to what I saw online, it's a
I know.
recording studio that people can rent out.
I know, no, actually never happened. So for 20 years. He just stored
But
his.
we're talking about the plans, we're not
Right.
talking about the tenants.
Right. He was asking me, that's why I explained.
Well, no, he was saying the plans, in his opinion, can't have a shared hallway between residences and businesses and a
Actually,
bathroom.
I talked to Replay app, and I told him he has to use the side door, not the same hallway as the other business. Because actually, he just used this as a storage. And it won't be too long, the whole, that side gonna be a apartment, I think.
Well, I just don't, I don't think
That
you're
would be
hearing
cleaner.
us, and so I feel like I'm afraid what's gonna happen is that you're gonna come back on the 28th and not have addressed our concerns. So I just want to make sure you understand.
What I try to say is, it's been since January 1st this year. I already told everybody the lobby entrance, which was the main entrance, will be for business only. Okay, which is only two business: dance center and architect. And I can assure you, the Replay Avenue is just for storage. And I already told him he has to use the other one. You know why? Because the dance center doesn't like to see young men walking there.
Okay.
Which Replay Avenue is a young man,
Well,
legally blind young man.
we took a motion.
Yeah, to continue to August, whatever it was.
28th.
Mike, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Yeah,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
thank you.
And Anita? And
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye, so it's unanimous.
See you on the 28th.
Yep. And I'll make sure I have all the letters for from fire department, from water department,
And DPW.
And
Right,
updated
right.
plans,
right, 3 letters.
And the plans that show.
updated plans that show what we asked for.
Yeah.
Preferably from an architect.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Next up, we have, well,
We got to do the vote to
Yeah, we
continue.
got to
vote to
continue
continue.
150.
So we have 150 North Road requesting for continuation.
I'll move to continue to August 28th, was it?
Yes.
I went to that dance. I was a dance dad.
All right, so motion by Mike Raisbeck, second by John
I'll
Sousa.
second.
And we'll take a vote on continuing
Aye.
150 North. John?
Aye for me.
Paul?
Aye.
Mike Walsh is an aye. Anita?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So that's unanimous. And next up, we have 10 Hildreth Street.
Good evening. For the record, Brian Gaudreau with Hancock Associates, along with Attorney Hausler, and on Zoom, we have John DeMille, Project LSP with Wilcox and Barton. So this evening, I'd like to talk about three items primarily. First, just an overview of the updated 4-lot exhibit that we have, as well as what happened at Conservation last night. And then I'll turn it over to Attorney Hausler to go over the title that was requested, with the understanding that KP Law still has to review that. And then the majority of the time, I'd like to dive into stormwater, just to understand, or kind of refamiliarize the board with our approach to stormwater, how it's been reviewed by DPW, and then what outstanding unaddressed items or concerns that the board may have with respect to that. Evan, could you pull up the 4 lots exhibit?
This one?
No, the one that was shared earlier in the week.
This one.
Yes. So last time we were before you, we had introduced a 4-lot revision. It dropped the project density down to 3 duplexes and then a relocation of the existing home on Lot 4. We had a pretty lengthy discussion about roadway waivers and different criteria, and the board had indicated sidewalks only on one side. This is a reflection of that. So primarily, what we've done is we've tightened up the right-of-way to 34 feet from what is required, which is 40 feet for a lane. So 8 feet, kind of a waived reduction, and then a sidewalk on the northern side of the roadway. We're still showing a 20-foot paved width with a T-style turnaround. We anticipate further discussion on that item, obviously. And then we've added visitor parking spaces. So we've provided 7 visitor parking spaces, 3 up towards the front of the project by Hildreth and 4 at the rear off the Hammerhead turnaround. And that's an attempt to address the concern that there's not going to be adequate parking. I had described one garage space and 2 driveway spaces per unit, so there's 3 spaces for each one of the duplexes that is there. Now, last night at Conservation, we showed this plan, and generally it was received better than the previous one. We still have to take a hard look at Lot 4, and likely we're going to be revising that limit of work line to be at the 100-foot buffer. It encroaches about 10 feet to 0 feet, given the irregular shape of the buffer. So generally, with this exhibit, we incorporated what the board had indicated last time, and with the understanding that we're going to continue to discuss the waivers that are proposed. So with that, that's the exhibit. Doug, I'd like to turn it over to you to speak about title, and then back to me for stormwater.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members. At your request, I performed a full title examination of the 2 parcels that are at issue here. There are 2 parcels. One is a 38,000 square foot parcel. It's shown on the subdivision plan as Lot 5 in Plan Book 88, Plan 57. The second parcel is 4.217 acres, and that's on Plan Book 85, Plan 33A. I provided Evan, and he'll spread it around to town council and anybody else, the full backup for all of the references I'm making here from the records of the Registry of Deeds. Both of the plans that I just referenced were stamped as A&R plans from prior planning boards going back 50 years or more, obviously. We're talking about 60 years, actually. Both parcels have more than sufficient frontage, 179 feet on parcel 2 and 125 on parcel 1. I've provided copies of the deeds of record. Those 2 deeds came under separate chains and eventually became into one chain of title sometime in or about the 1950s. But I've laid out the history. I did a 100-year search of the titles, mostly because it was relatively easy in certain instances. What I was really trying to find were a layout of Hildreth Street. What was envisioned back in 1890, 1900, 1910. I could not find, there's a reference to some type of a description of Hildreth Street that was in some deed, which I have not been able to locate. It was from one individual sold by Frederick Fisher, and it seems to be sometime in the 1910 period. I have searched the records. I have not been able to locate it. I'm going to continue to try to find that. But it's well outside the Massachusetts standard of a 50-year title. What it was interesting about the title, I found, is that not so much in the deeds to the subject locus that you've been reviewing, but in some of the other deeds relevant to the parcels along Hildreth Street. And most particularly, I found one I thought really hit the spot, which was, I believe it was for 9 Hildreth Street, and that title. And it described Hildreth Street, and as I wrote, for that portion of Hildreth Street between Plum and Billrica Road, so going south to north. And it described it as follows. First of all, they called it a right-of-way in one plan, and then they called it a street, and then an area reserved for road. They all referred to a 25-foot wide street and an additional 15-foot area designated reserved for road. That's how it's shown on the plans of record. So it was originally envisioned to be a 40-foot wide access route. That's how it was adopted. The language, particularly in many of the deeds, was a strip of land 25 feet in width, bordering on the easterly side of the premises. So basically from my client's lot line on Hildreth Street, then going 25 feet westerly. And that is to always kept open with the benefit of a perpetual right to pass and repass on foot or with horses or wagons or other vehicles. Said strip running to Billrica Street, so-called, as mentioned in the deed, and this is what I was referring to, George M. Wright from Frederick A. Fisher. So apparently sometime in 1910-ish time period, they envisioned a 25-foot road with another, and then it goes on further and later on with an additional 15.1 foot plot shown on the plan reserved for roads to be kept open for street purposes, being a street 40 feet in width. That's what the records of the various deeds are showing along Hildreth Street. They do not say that in my client's deeds because it just directly abuts an A&R lot that is a record. They're using the plan of record. They have the right to use the road. I then provided some case law on this, which I'm sure town council will review, and I'll be happy to discuss anything with town council. But what I found under Massachusetts law is that a right-of-way is a publicly owned area reserved for transportation purposes, and that adjacent land from private owners may be required to construct or reconstruct highways or bridges within a right-of-way. And generally in Chelmsford, we use a 6 to 8 feet area for reserve for a right-of-way expansion. We are seeking to expand that road width from what it currently on ground is, I think, approximately 14 feet in some places. But that's the entire purpose of the easement that's been declared the road. Purpose of that easement is for transportation. We're just looking to improve it, as is the legal right of an abutting property owner to a road. An abutter to an unimproved public way has the legal right to use the unimproved public way, and it doesn't constitute trespass because he's entitled to use the entire width of the way. So somebody like our applicant is using his rights to use Hildreth Street. He possesses a right of travel over the entire width of the land that's been reserved for the street, and he's entitled to make the street passable and usable for its entire width. So technically, if my client desired to do, and I don't think it does whatsoever, it could ask and demand that it be 40 feet and build out, or build 32 and reserve the 8 feet. It's not looking to do that because it's not looking to further disturb any of the abutters along the way. I also cited some case law, including a 2023 appeals court case. It's well established that the holder of an easement has the duty to make repairs and improvements necessary for enjoyment of the easement, so long as the burden on the servient estate is not unreasonably increased. We're not looking to overburden the easement. We're doing it exactly for what the purpose of the easement was, for travel, passing, repassing. And then I cited a whole series of cases about easements and the right to enjoy the rights to use the easement. There was another more recent case in the Land Court, 2013, that said, it's well settled that where there are several owners in common of a private way, each owner may make reasonable repairs which do not injuriously affect his co-owners, but he cannot make any alteration of the course of the way or any change in grade or service which makes the way less convenient and useful to anybody who's using the right-of-way. So if my client was required to have to take some portion of somebody's front yard, it's not lessening their property, it's benefiting the entire use of the street for everyone's purpose, so it meets the definition. So he's just trying to make reasonable improvements to the topography, width, and grade of the road. I've given up as attachments plans of records, deeds, again, going back 100 years. I think it'll make it fairly straightforward that he has a right to widen the street. And we'll be able to be pleased to answer any questions after town council has a chance to review it, or the board has a chance to digest what we've just given to you. Thank you for your time.
Was that in our packet? I missed it.
It
No,
came
it
this
came in.
afternoon.
I'm going to email it out to the board and council tomorrow. Did I already email that
I
out?
think you did this
But I
afternoon.
thought, okay, yeah. So council's still with us. He obviously hasn't had a chance to do a deep dive on it.
Right. So, do we want to have any commentary on that, or should we go to stormwater?
I haven't read it, so I don't know.
I'm happy to dive into stormwater. I know the material was just given to the board, so it might take a little bit of time, especially with KP Law reviewing. So moving on to stormwater. We issued an exhibit today that was brought up during the last hearing, and it was an overlay of the hydrogeologic groundwater contour map. It was within the Board of Health required hydrogeo study, and we overlaid the 5-lot subdivision plan, which is the actual engineered plan that we have out here. So just taking a step back from this, our stormwater methodology is focused on primarily mirroring existing conditions. So right now we have a single-family house out there in a driveway, and topographically the entire site slopes from north to south, generally speaking. It's like northwest to southwest. Our stormwater analysis points were at the southern property line, at the abutter, and then also at the southern property line for River Meadow Brook. So we took 2 analysis points. One of them, conservation has a little interest in because of the potential vernal pool and the wetlands that are associated with it off-site. So we analyzed that separately. We're charged with making sure that at property lines we're not discharging a higher peak rate than existing conditions. So the way that we're approaching stormwater is the roadway captures the northern lots, flow onto the roadway. There's a series of catch basins, and then at the end of the cul-de-sac or hammerhead turnaround, however it ends up being configured, there's an underground infiltration system. So they're plastic chambers in the ground surrounded by stone that capture stormwater, attenuate, which is slow it down, and then provide recharge, put stormwater into the ground. Again, the goal here is to mirror the existing conditions. Now, DPW has reviewed our stormwater twice now. They reviewed it originally with the 6-lot subdivision plan and then the revised 5-lot subdivision. Again, with the 4-lot exhibit that we've shown, we have to engineer that, and it will be another revision to this plan, and that's essentially right-sizing the underground system. So our treatment train, if you will, it's how we treat for total suspended solids. We have deep sump-putted catch basins to a hydrodynamic separator. Those 2 elements exceed the TSS that's required by the town and the state, and then it gets passed into an underground infiltration system. The infiltration system itself is also configured with an isolator row. An isolator row is a row of chambers wrapped with geotextile that provides additional filtration to any of the stormwater entering the system before it has a chance to be infiltrated into the ground. Our outfall pipe is, there's a little arrow pointed kind of on the southern portion of the cul-de-sac. So there's a 12-inch ADS pipe. So that's discharging excess runoff for those less frequent events. So think 100-year storm, think 25-year storm. Again, all of our calculations have been reviewed twice now by DPW, and they found them to be consistent with both state regulation and local stormwater regulation. Now, in relation to the exhibit plan that you see before you, 6 monitoring wells were installed as a part of the hydrogeologic analysis. It basically, the point of the wells was to test for specific constituents, as well as determine the direction of groundwater flow and the influence of the Chelmsford Water Department's public water supply wells. And what the results of the groundwater kind of contouring analysis is generally speaking, groundwater flows the same direction that surface water flows. It all goes from northwest to southeast towards River Meadow Brook. The report itself determined that this site is outside the zone of influence of the Chelmsford Water Department's public water supply wells, so there's no impact when the pumps are on or the pumps are off. And you can see generally how it's located. The stormwater chambers are located on the site in relation to those wells and the testing that was performed there. Now again, John DeMille with Wilcox and Barton is here, so if there's any questions about the testing or constituents of the groundwater wells, he will be happy to answer those. Now, our position is that this design as it sits, again, with the caveat that we have to revise from 5 lots down to 4, so basically shrink down our stormwater system for the reduced impact that we currently are proposing, meet all of the state and local regulations. I know we haven't had a chance to dive into this, but because we are, again, embarking on a full redesign of this, I want to make sure that we understand any concerns that the board has with respect to stormwater and the groundwater and monitoring wells that are out there right now. So that is my presentation, kind of a high-level review of what has been proposed previously, kind of the process that we've gone through and been reviewed by DPW. And again, John is on Zoom, and I am here to answer questions the board may have.
Hi, everyone. Just for the record, I'm John DeMille with Wilcox and Barton, licensed site professional. Michael LaFavor has brought me into this project ever since the initial detection of PFAS in groundwater. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
This is Joel. Have we received a report that indicates to us what the PFAS levels are and where they were detected and so forth?
It's pinned to the agenda.
It's been submitted to numerous departments. Brian, I'll have you chime in on that.
Yeah, it's posted, linked on the agenda right now. It's Northeast Geoscience Hydrogeologic Report.
Okay, I apologize. I haven't had a chance to look at that. Could you tell us in what wells was PFAS? Well, first of all, was PFAS the only reportable contaminant that you discovered?
So with regards to contaminants regulated under the MCP, I believe the water district required sampling for PFAS and volatile organic compounds.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding, so NGI did the initial sampling event at wells, if you see the exhibit, MW1, MW2, and MW3. Those 3 wells were sampled for both VOCs and PFAS. VOCs were not detected above laboratory reporting limits. However, PFAS, or total PFAS 6, which are the 6 regulated PFAS compounds regulated by Mass DEP and the MCP, were detected at concentrations slightly above the existing threshold for GW1 waters in 2 monitoring wells on the eastern downgradient portion of the property, MW1 and MW2. So after this initial finding, this is when my company jumped in, we resampled those wells because PFAS are very delicate. They're being detected at levels parts per trillion, which is extremely low. If there's any sediment in the sample, if the sampler has sunscreen on that contains PFAS, if they're wearing waterproof clothing, you can cross-contaminate the sample.
Mm-hmm.
So our first step was to go out there and resample the 3 existing monitoring wells. We did that. We found similar results. So we said, all right, is this an on-site source or is this a regional issue? So we started looking into it a bit more. Obviously, many of you are aware that the Chelmsford water supply, several of the water supply wells are impacted with PFAS. I believe it's Riverneck Water Treatment is the water resource that serves this neighborhood, and they have had detections of PFAS at similar concentrations. So that means these folks in this neighborhood are using their hoses outside to wash their car, water their garden, power wash their house, and these PFAS are coming from the municipal well and infiltrating into the groundwater surface. So what we did, just to kind of evaluate this theory and this thought process, is we installed 3 additional wells on the upgradient side of the property. This is MW101, MW102, and MW103. You can see that we sampled each of those wells only once. And at MW103, which is the most upgradient well, right at the upgrading edge of the property, we have PFAS-6 concentrations at 15.4 nanogram per liter. It doesn't exceed the threshold, but as I said, this is a very sensitive laboratory analysis. This is PPT. In my mind, in my professional mind, and what I've seen at numerous sites across the Commonwealth, 15.4 and 22.8, those are the same concentrations in my mind. So to me,
I'm sorry,
what
can
we
you
have,
repeat that again? 15.
yes, so because the concentrations, the detection limits are so low, we're looking at PPT, parts per trillion. At MW103, I have a PFAS-6 concentration of 15.4. At MW2, where it exceeds the threshold, I have a concentration of 22.8. With my experience at PFAS sites throughout the state, those concentrations are pretty much the same. If I were to go out and sample 103 again, I could detect PFAS-6 at 5. I could detect PFAS-6 at 24. You're going to get a fluctuation. In fact, MW2 was sampled twice. First time it was sampled, it was below the threshold. It was detected at a concentration of 17.6. The second time, when we resampled, it went up a little bit. These concentrations are going to fluctuate above and below the standard because the standard is so low and the detection limits are so low. So after all that jibber jabber, what my current theory is, based on the data, based on my site inspections at this site, I don't have a significant source of PFAS contamination on my site. It appears it's migrating from an off-site source, or it's a factor of the impacted public water supply well that serves the property.
So the fact that you're detecting it at sort of a most upgradient, I assume that the one that's close to the road is about the most upgradient?
That's correct. I have another upgradient well that's right on the northern portion of the property.
Yeah, it's a little bit further north, yeah.
Can you point those out?
And that has a 6, so that is a difference.
That is a difference. So
there was speculation that there was contaminants dumped on that property at some point. So your professional opinion is that the difference between a 6 and a 22.7 is just the water we use from River Neck? Is that
It's
It's an undeveloped site, other than that house, right?
Yeah.
Like, how is water being
How's-
used?
Yeah.
Neighbors.
Like, nobody's washing
No one's
their
been in
cars
that house
back there.
for
They're
a
not
very
gardening.
long time.
Okay, but PFAS compounds, if you're familiar, they're called the forever compounds because they don't go away. So how long has the public water supply well been impacted? We've only started monitoring for PFAS how long ago? PFAS have been in use since the 1950s.
But your premise is that someone was using water in that general area from River Neck supply that may have contaminated from washing cars, whatever. But the problem is, there's speculation that there was other things happening on that property, like car repairs. He ran a car repair business out of that property.
Cars were.
So when I did a phase 1 environmental site assessment as well at this property, I interviewed the property owner, Garrett Overhauser. The information that he provided with me, and based on what I saw during my site inspection, granted it's vacant right now, he indicated that he did hobby, personal automotive repair in his driveway and in his garage.
He had a company. That he, as far as we know, I mean, there was speculation that mail was delivered to a neighbor with his business being a automotive repair business.
Yep, so I don't know about that. I did question him about any commercial industrial use of the property. The only information that he indicated was that he ran a small, hobby farm, horse farm, grew corn, grew hay.
His dad did, I think.
Could I make a suggestion here?
Yep.
I believe the Board of Health is scheduled to meet, it's either August 5th or 6th, to specifically discuss the Phase 1.
And what about the peer review of the hydro?
And I believe they're peer reviewing the Phase 1 as well, and they're discussing the hydrogeologic report with a peer
Peer
review.
reviewed also, yeah.
Yeah. So
Is
that leads me to believe that the proper venue and forum for the Phase 1 contamination is with the Board of Health. And I would encourage the board to engage with Brian similarly as you did with 93 Brick Hill, stormwater as it pertains to proximity to infiltration areas. And then see how the Board of Health process plays out in a general sense related to contamination.
Well, it just seems like it gradually gets worse as it goes through the area where we're concerned.
Sure. I mean, what I'm suggesting is,
So it starts out at 6.7 and it slowly
yeah,
gets.
under definitive subdivision, I'm not sure you're gonna be able to require cleanup or pursue
Well,
site characterization.
it doesn't start out at 6.7. It was detected in that well at 6.7. It also was detected at another upgradient well at 15.4.
But the board's focus under definitive subdivision is stormwater. And then you have a special permit on aquifer protection as well. So I think you need to figure out whether, you're gonna lead the Phase 1 PFAS contamination effort, or is the Board of Health? The Board of Health is the one who required it because they have the legal authority to. Former council indicated to the board that under definitive subdivision, the planning board didn't have the authority.
To require it.
Right, and we never asked about aquifer protection special permit. But the Board of Health is pursuing that information. And in this process, to date, we haven't spent a lot of time on the aquifer protection special permit. But tonight, I think it's about,
But the stormwater is changing too, so I mean, you're changing the whole project.
So to
We don't even know how the road's being laid out, a hammerhead or a.
From a stormwater perspective, it doesn't matter. So our stormwater design is not going to fundamentally change unless there is an interest of this board to do something. Regardless if the road ends up as a full cul-de-sac, a hammerhead turnaround, we're showing 20 feet wide. If the board doesn't grant that waiver and it's 22 feet wide, we're only talking about square footage of impervious being contributory to what we've designed. So that's a volume calculation, and that's a TSS calculation.
Right.
So fundamentally, none of that matters from stormwater.
Okay, all right.
Brian, in the new design, are you guys still considering the sloped granite curbing?
I don't know if we're showing curbing on this right now.
Are you showing two sides sidewalk there? I can't tell.
No, it's sidewalk on one side. I
So
believe,
storm-
Chris, you would ask for curbing in relation to stormwater, and we would make that concession and not ask for the waiver on curbing. We would still want the reduced pavement width and a hammerhead potentially, but if there's an assurance that granite curbing gives this board, I think we're willing to do that.
As far as the stormwater goes, our concerns, for example, on 270, we had a reportable concentrations at about 20 or so, if I recall, at Billerica Road, and then in the back of the property, it was about 90. So there was an appreciable difference there, as opposed to what we're seeing here. In the case of 93 Brick Hill, we had a place, a spot of PFAS, which we don't know if it was bigger or smaller because they didn't test around it. But in that case, they were locating a large amount of infiltration just up gradient of it, where down gradient it was leading to zone 2. In this case, we're detecting what looks to me like a more uniform distribution potentially of PFAS that isn't varying significantly over the property. And we aren't, I don't think we're necessarily the plan is introducing infiltration in a concentrated area close to where we think there is a potential source of PFAS. So I'm a little bit less concerned in this case. In 270, there it was pretty drastic because it was all impervious, and then we were making it largely pervious.